Hello, everybody. Today we have a guest from Germany, Alexander Luebbe. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
We are very excited to have you on this show. So, you have a studio, Glade Media, right?
Yes, right.
How long has this been like going on? What's the story behind it? How did you get into the music?
Yeah, I actually started recording music when I was at school. Just recording small artists like friends of mine doing hip hop music and stuff. And sometimes I tried to record guitars as well and stuff like that, and it sounded pretty shitty. But yeah, after a while, it sounded better and better, and then after school, I got more into it. I did like 1 year off doing, yeah, actually nothing or only doing studio stuff and getting more into it, reading books about it, and so it's all. I learned everything myself by, yeah, watching YouTube videos or reading books about it. And then I actually did a apprenticeship as a salesman for media, um, just to have something more, yeah, maybe a little bit more serious, like I said in that time, um, to be a little more safe, maybe. So I did that at Universal Pictures in Germany for the home entertainment section. But yeah, I pretty quickly I saw that like only working on like in a big company and working with numbers and stuff is not my thing. So I spend more time again doing watching YouTube videos about recording stuff and mixing stuff and the whole music production, and yeah, got more into it, and it sounded better and better, and yeah, and that time I recorded my first, like the first real band, full band, and the first EP, and that went out to be pretty good for the beginning. And so, yeah, everything went on. People who knew that band asked me to record their bands and stuff like that. So everything started, and yeah, right now that's my main thing, and it's, yeah, evolving.
Fantastic. So, you are a professional audio engineer. This is what you do. This is how you survive. This pays your bills, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really cool thing. Now, I was always wondering, what's the European kind of way of producing and mixing and kind of the European sound versus the Western, more American sound. I think it's like movies sometimes. There's a Hollywood-based movie and there's the European-based movie. It's different. It has some flavor to it. I want to know what's your take on this when it comes to music production and the process and the final polishing of audio. What do you think about it?
That's a pretty good question because actually I have always been more a fan of American music and American, yeah, production style, actually, because it's a little, in my opinion, it's a little, maybe a little too perfect. It's too polished. When I was younger, I liked that pretty much. I only listened to American bands. When I got more into producing and mixing, I found out that that is a boring pretty boring style of handling music, because it's just making everything sound perfect, and that's what I did in the first place. But after a while, I got more and more into that character thing and putting more character into it, and learning that mistakes can be very cool and can sound very good. I don't want to say that that I like one style more than the other, but I think it's important to take to take the upsides of every style and combine them maybe.
The industry is really evolving. The technology is really coming um, and mixing with the creative side of everything. So there's the creativity, the musicality of everything, but the technology can really push ideas many times. So I want to hear your take on this. How do you think that technology affects the musicality and the music business?
When I get an idea, when I'm producing, sometimes it fades away after 1 hour and then the idea is gone if I didn't print it in the computer. And for example, Ableton is pretty good for that because it's really fast and so nothing gets lost, no idea gets lost. I think it's the same with the whole music industry, with the whole technology, because everything is going faster and faster, and as well all the software plugins. It's way faster to just put a plugin on a track and tweak it a little bit instead of turning on the hardware version of it and patching everything.
So there is basically kind of uh, a preview mode. You can like use the plugin to kind of get the idea out and see what could happen, and then maybe replicate it later with the actual amplifiers and maybe take reamping processes and stuff like that. So definitely the plugins can help you in being really fast and maybe just go with the flow of ideas and not so much with just trying different cables and connecting things all the time. Absolutely. So what is actually your workflow? How do you approach making a record?
Most of the times, I am working with bands or artists who already wrote a song, and then they come to me with that song or with that EP or album. And I'm working with Pro Tools myself because I know many people who work with Ableton, and they are more like jamming and stuff and like doing things spontaneously. I think I am more like the first step for a production would be to go to a rehearsal of the band and listen to their songs. And the first time I'm listening to their songs, I already have a few ideas in mind what I could do with the sound, how I could record that guitar and that guitar, and how I could mix it maybe even. And the second step would be that like the band is coming to my studio and we'd start recording or maybe do a little pre-production and do a few demos just to have the songs in Pro Tools already and talk about the songs maybe a little bit if they don't bring demos anyway. That's why I'm using Pro Tools, because I have everything in my mind already and I don't need to improvise and to jam on the songs because they're not my songs. I'm not writing the songs for the bands. I'm shaping the songs. I mean, sometimes I even change a few words or change a whole, or say like that the lyrics in this verse aren't that good. So let's talk about them. Let's rewrite them a little bit together. So I'm like another band member on the outside.
Like the advisor, kind of. You're trying
Yeah,
to
exactly.
advise and you bring your experience in and so on. So what about what's the nature of this band today? Are they willing to go to a studio and willing to listen to a producer, or are they going into do it yourself, do everything on their own? What is it like in Germany when it comes to do it yourself?
Every band is different. I worked with bands who came to me and we started producing and they had everything in their minds and they just started playing, and I just hit the record button, and everything was like, my part was more like a technical thing, because they had everything in their minds, and I was asking them if they want me to to look at the songs in an artistic way and to maybe enhance them a little bit through my experience. But they didn't. Maybe sometimes they don't want that, um, because they think that their songs are already perfect. Yeah, and other bands, for example, the last band I recorded, which is called Easy Shapes. Um, in that case, the songs were pretty finished already, but yeah, I had many ideas, and also stuff like keys, like programming and effects stuff, which they don't have in a live section, or in a live set. So we worked on the songs, and yeah, it's different. Every artist is different on that, I think.
If the band comes to you and you make some production and you use effects and virtual instruments and stuff like that, and they would want to bring that to a live show, how would you approach this?
Some bands want to have the best live sound possible, and want to have a similar sound like on the album or on the CD. Um, so they would take the backing, like do backing tracks, and the drummer has a click in his ear and plays back the backing tracks. And some of the bands, for example, Easy Shapes, which I talked about, they think it's another philosophy. They think that live and studio recordings are two different things, and they don't need to have the keys live. They want their live set to sound different than the recorded songs. So, yeah.
What would be your take on this? For example, standard rock band, for example, adding some effects, some keys, something like that. If they want to keep that on stage as well, but not as a backing track, so they have the flexibility to jam a little bit. How would you approach this? Would you take this into consideration even when you're actually making the songs? Or would you say like, okay, we'll just change some effects later and we'll see what we can get to mimic that? Or can we find a way to actually, produce it in the box or somewhere and then have the same sounds and effects used as a live performance later? If this would be, the case for you, how would you approach setting this up?
Sometimes the band members have like keyboard ideas as well, if they don't have a keyboarder. And I always talk with them and ask them, like, wait a second, that could be a problem when you want to perform that song live, because you don't have a keyboarder, and maybe you could play it with a guitar with an effect that you have on your pedal board, and or something like that. Yeah, so I asked them.
When you're like mixing and trying to, you use a lot of plugins that are available and things you mix the sounds, you add reverbs and stuff like that. I was wondering if there is, in your experience, a system or maybe a workflow that you can do in order to take everything you had in the production to the live show, but keep it live. So not as a backing track, but actually bringing the set and play things live on the set, using whatever you as a producer prepared in the studio.
I have a small solo project that I'm doing like as a hobby, and it's a little bit more electronic style. And what I do there is I take my computer with me and an interface. I take it on stage, and I'm plugging in I'm plugging the microphone into the interface, and it goes through Ableton in that case. and so I have the same reverbs and the same delays and compressors and stuff on my live vocals that I have on the recorded ones. So that could be an approach to do that. But for a band where maybe nobody has the know-how to use Ableton, and nobody wants to have a computer, um, I have no idea. Maybe bands should get their own sound guy for live, because they can use the same plugins as well, like we use in the studio.
How to set up your monitoring systems right, since as a freelancer you kind of travel a lot, you're on tours, you maybe do some live gigs, you maybe do some different type of things, and especially today you got to travel a lot if you want to survive kind of as a freelancer. So I was wondering, when it comes to monitoring, you maybe you one day you mix at your own studio, the next day you're going to be in London in some other studio, the third day you might end up in a bedroom studio, sometimes you're just going to have the headphones and nothing else. So how do you keep the consistency through all these things? How do you know what is actually mixed right and what is not, since you're not in your studio and you don't know the monitoring system you're working with? Do you have any experience with that?
But for mixing, I am always going into my studio where I know the sound, and sometimes I use headphones. Like for example, I couldn't make it to the studio today, so I'm in my flat right now, and what I'm doing here is I'm using the OLLO headphones. I think it's great to have headphones, like mixing headphones, because if you're in another place, you don't have to know the monitoring system in a studio or something like that. You can just grab your headphones that you know already, and everything's perfect.
You have the S4 model, right? The open back, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you like about them?
I already had mixing headphones, like open back headphones before them. Um, So yeah, the I mean open back headphones are cool for mixing, because it feels open. It doesn't feel like you have any headphones on your head at all. So it sounds more like a monitoring system. There was always a downside for me on mixing headphones, because I couldn't hear the bass that good. And I think you can hear the bass on these way better than on other mixing headphones.
The technical explanation of this would be they are open back. So when there is a speaker with a membrane and everything is integrated in the wood itself. So there's no glue, nothing. It's all one piece of wood and the speaker is directly in there. And the open back means that everything that is behind the speaker kind of goes out. And everything that is in the front of the speaker, the cavity with the ear pad and between your ears, is totally sealed. So for example, the HD650s or other headphones, they do not have a sealed front cavity from the back. In our case, we have it sealed. So there is one kind of cavity or acoustic chamber in front of the speaker, and the other is behind it. So it is open back. It is open back for the air that is behind the speaker, but the air from the front of the speaker has nowhere to go. So it makes it as a sealed, compressed chamber. And this makes them really linear, and the bass is really stable. You can actually listen to compression really nice, because it's very, if you move the compressor just a little bit, you're gonna hear it working, because the air doesn't escape from the front cavity to the back cavity. The downside is that if you lay them like that, flat on the table, and if you press them down, the air has nowhere to go, and that it can break the membrane. So you got to be careful with them. What do you think is the future of audio engineering? Do you think that the freelancers are gonna start, maybe, I don't know, is everybody gonna start doing things on their own? since the knowledge is there, it's available from YouTube to all sorts of other platforms. You can learn this if you want. Or do you think there is room for professionals even down the road, maybe in 10 years, in 15 years? Are we still going to have something to do, or are we just going to, die out slowly? What do you think?
Me as a freelancer, I'm always learning more and more that the whole thing around it is pretty important too. So you have your technical skills in the middle that can be perfect maybe, but you also have to do finance stuff and marketing maybe and networking and all that stuff. And I think that is something that gets more and more important automatically, because the whole technical stuff can be done by more people in the future, I think, because there's also going to be more plugins that can mix automatically.
Being a professional is not just being skilled and knowing the music and technical things. It's also, just being a human. So connecting with people, being a part of the industry on a whole different level. So I absolutely agree with that. And another thing, I think that technology will bring new things every day. For example, the 3D audio, the VR, IR, all these things, ambisonics, and so on. And, before this gets far enough that everybody's going to do it on their own, there's going to be a gap of at least 5 to 10 years when only the most experienced engineers can tackle with this, can actually pull it off. So I think that the professionals, freelance professionals as yourself, will always be ahead of the curve, but only if you're learning the new stuff really fast and on track. If you fall behind, if you're just going to go, oh yeah, I know the Pro Tools and I'm going to go with Pro Tools for the next 20 years, sooner or later, you're going to be out of the business. So you got to evolve and move forward.